Good day, class. Today, we are going to talk about the Japanese mythology, Chinese mythology, Hindu mythology, and Filipino mythology. First is the Japanese, Izanami, Izanagi, and their children. The myths of Japanese popular religion derive from oral traditions, codified for posterity in two books, the Nihon Shoki, published in 720 CE, and the Kojiki, written by an official of the Empress Genyu between 708 and 714 CE. An additional source, the Kogo Shui, was written in 807 CE by Imebe no Hironari, who collected together oral traditions omitted from the Nihon Shoki and Kojiki. Izanami, or she who invites, and Izanagi, or he who invites, are the primordial gods of the Shinto religion who were believed to have created the islands of Japan and given birth to many of the other Shinto gods or kami. The creation of Japan. Standing on the bridge or stairway of heaven known as Ama no Hashidate and which connected heaven, Ama, to earth, the two gods Izanami and Izanagi used a jewel-encrusted spear to steer the ocean. With drawing the spear, salt crystallized into drops on the lip, and these fell back into the ocean as islands. In another version, the spear dripped mud from as yet murky and chaotic seas. The first island to be created was Onogoroshima, and the gods immediately used the island to build a house and host their wedding ceremony. The ritual involved circling around a pillar, or in some versions the spear, with the two gods moving in opposite directions. However, during the sacred marriage ritual, Izanami wrongly spoke first when they passed each other, and as a consequence of this impiety, their first child was a miscarriage, and born an ugly weakling without bones. This was the god Hiruko, later Ibisu, who would become the patron of fishermen and one of the seven gods of good luck. Hiruko was abandoned by his parents and set in a basket for the sea to lake it where it would. The second child was the island of Awa, but Izanami and Izanagi were still not satisfied with their offspring, and they asked their parents, the seven invisible gods, the reason for their misfortune, revealing that the reason was their incorrect performance of the marriage ritual. The couple repeated the ceremony, this time making sure Izanagi spoke first. The couple then continued to create more auspicious offspring, including the eight principal islands of Japan: Awaji, Shikoku, Oki, Isakushi or Kyushu, Iki, Izu, Sadu, and Uyumato. Also created were a prodigious number of other gods; in fact, more than 800 kami, or gods, spirits, and natural phenomena exist in the Shinto pantheon. Other notable children were Oho-Watatsumi, or god of the sea, Kukunushi, or god of the trees, Uhu-Yamatsumi, or god of the mountains, and Kagutsuchi, or god of fire, often referred to in hushed tones as Humusubi during ritual prayers. Izanami's death and revenge. The birth of some of the gods came at a certain price though. Izanami was terribly burned when she gave birth to Kagutsuchi, and it is said that many kami were born from her tears, as she suffered from her injuries until finally she died. Revenge was swift though, as Izanagi cut the fire god to pieces with his sword. It is said that many new deities sprang up from each piece of the god. Izanagi, no doubt unable to live without his beloved wife, rashly followed her down into the underworld, or Yomi, also called Nenokuni Land of Roots and Sokonokuni, the Hollow Land. Unfortunately, he was unable to rescue Izanami, as she had already eaten food in the underworld and so was forbidden from returning to the realm of the living. However, Izanami pleaded with the gods to be made an exception of and made Izanagi promise that he would be patient and not try to see her in her present state. The process of release was long, however, and an impatient Izanagi could wait no more, and so attempted to see his beloved. He was in for a shock though, for when he saw her, the body of goddess was already decomposing. Izanami was more than displeased at her husband breaking his promise and seeing her in such a state. But worse, the eight thunders and the ugly females chased the god out of the underworld. During his retreat, Izanagi stopped the pursuing thunders by throwing his stick, or kunado no kami, in their path, and it was at this moment that the two gods of roads, Shimata no Kami and Yachimata Hiko, were created, together known as Sei no Kami or the Sojin. The birth of the Shinto gods. On finally reaching the outside world, Izanagi blocked the entrance to Yomi with an innermost stone. Fortunate to escape unharmed from such a terrible place of darkness, the god had to perform a cleansing ritual in the river Woto to rid himself of the impurities of the underworld. It was during these rituals that various gods were born: Amaterasu, the sun goddess, when he washed his left eye; Isukiyomi, the god of the moon, when he washed his right eye; Susanoo, or Takehaya Susanoo, the storm god, when he washed his nose; and Shinatsuhiko, the god of wind, was born from Izanagi's breath. In addition, when he cast off his tainted clothes in the river, a further 12 gods were born from the 12 pieces. In reference to this episode, the practice of harai or cleansing before entering a sacred shrine or jinja has become an important part of Shinto ritual. Chinese gods of heaven, earth, and the underworld. The Jade Emperor and other gods of the earthly domain. According to Chinese popular religion, there are three domains in the cosmos: heaven, earth, and the underworld. Each domain is populated by a host of important gods and goddesses. The heavenly domain is ruled by the Jade Emperor, who presides over a court of important deities who are worshipped throughout China. For many years, it has been a truism that the Chinese conception of gods is based on the Chinese bureaucracy, and that social organization of the human government is the essential model the Chinese people use when imagining the gods. At the apex of the divine bureaucracy stands the Jade Emperor in heaven, corresponding to the human son of heaven or Tianzi, another name for emperor, who rules over earth. The Jade Emperor is in charge of an administration divided into bureaus, and each bureaucrat god takes responsibility for a clearly defined domain or discrete function. The Jade Emperor, Yu Huang or Yudi, was considered to be the ruler of heaven. He was thought to be like a human emperor, in that he ruled over the heavenly court populated by the important gods of China. The local officials of the celestial administration are the gods of walls and moats, also called the city gods, one per locality, and below them are the gods of the hearth, also called the stove or kitchen gods, one per family, who generate a never-ending flow of reports on the people under their jurisdiction. The 10 magistrates of hell, the very lowest officers who administer punishment to deceased spirits, passing through the purgatorial chambers of the underworld. They too have reports to fill out, citizens to keep track of, and jails to manage. The bureaucratic logic is also a striking part of Chinese iconography, temple architecture, and ritual structure. For peasants who could not read in traditional times, the bureaucratic nature of the gods was an apodictic matter of appearance. Gods were dressed as government officials. Their temples were laid out as imperial palaces, which include audience halls where one approaches God with a proper deportment. The gods at the court of the Jade Emperor were important deities who were worshipped throughout China. For example, every village had a village temple where many gods were worshipped, including one major god who was the protector or patron of that village. Different gods and goddesses were worshipped from village to village, but it was understood that all these gods actually resided in heaven at the court of the Jade Emperor. Mazu or Jianhu is the empress of heaven, associated with the sea and thought to be a protector of fishermen. Guanyu or Guandi is Emperor Guan, linked to warfare and military valor. Both of them were believed to have been mortals who had led exemplary lives and became gods after death. Ordinary people treated most gods with a mixture of awe and an interest in negotiation. The gods were prayed to and worshipped, but they could also be bribed and appeased with offerings and gifts. The gods sometimes left heaven to visit the earthly domain, and though they were not supremely powerful, they did have the power to help and hurt people in the earthly domain. The gods also had their foibles and could be capricious and get angry. One had to take care to not agitate the gods and work hard to remain on their good side. So the question is, how do one become a god? In theory, human beings who led exemplary lives had a chance to become gods in the afterlife. After being escorted to the underworld by the local city god and standing in judgment before one of the 10 magistrates of hell, an exemplary soul could be released from the underworld and choose to cross the silver bridges in heaven, which means that he or she would be reborn as a god. It was generally understood, however, that very few people ever had the opportunity to leave the underworld this way. Now let's proceed to Hindu, the Triune God and the Lesser Gods. The Hindu Trinity comprises Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, or Mahesh, the destroyer. These three gods represent the cyclical nature of our existence, from birth, preservation, destruction, to subsequent regeneration. These gods are identifiable in their artistic representations by the icons commonly associated with them. Gods of the Vedic period. Hinduism is broadly divided into the Puranic period and the more recent Vedic period. The Puranic period entailed worship of the gods of the elements of nature, such as Surya, the sun god, Indra, the god of rain and thunder, Chandra, the moon god, etc. Worship was generally in form of yagnas or elaborate rituals conducted by the priest caste known as the Brahmins. The three gods of the Hindu trinity ascended into prominence during the Vedic period at the same time that idol worship in temples was popularized. Consequently, the representations of the Puranic gods or the old gods are rare, while the Vedic gods are heavily represented in architectural reliefs, sculptures, as well as paintings. Vishnu the Preserver. Vishnu is the preserver and protector of the Hindu pantheon who descends to the earthly plane of existence whenever it is threatened by chaos or evil. Popular avatars of Vishnu include Rama and Krishna. Vishnu is portrayed with blue or gray-blue skin and is dressed in the finest clothes and jewels. As is common with Hindu gods, he is frequently accompanied by his animal companion and vahana, or vehicle, Garuda, who is part man and part eagle. Other icons associated with Vishnu include the conch shell, a war discus, a mace, and lotus flowers. A popular representation of Vishnu shows him reclining on Shishnag, the five-headed king of snakes, as he drifts through the primordial ocean that was in existence before the creation of the universe. He may be portrayed alone or with his consort Lakshmi, or the goddess of wealth. In some sculptures, he is portrayed with two consorts, Sri Devi or another name for Lakshmi, and Bhudevi or the earth goddess and an avatar of Lakshmi. Shiva the Destroyer. The blue-skinned Shiva is the destroyer of the Hindu trinity. In contrast to Vishnu, Shiva is described as a hermit or ascetic being dressed in animal skins with matted and dreadlocked hair. His common identifying features in artworks include his third eye, a damaru or drum, a trishul or trident, the serpent around his neck, and the crescent moon with the holy river Ganga flowing through his hair in some representations. He is portrayed with his consort Parvati and sometimes with their children, Skanda and Ganesh, the famous elephant-headed god. He may be shown immersed in deep meditation or in the popular Nataraja form where he dances the Tandava or dance of destruction, paving the way for regeneration. Another popular form of Shiva is the phallic Shiva Linga sculpture, which symbolizes his powerful regenerative energy. His animal vahana is Nandi, the bull, often depicted laying loyally at his feet, and Shiva is often depicted with one foot on a pasmara, the immortal demon who represents ignorance. Brahma the Creator. Brahma, the creator, is usually depicted as an old man with four heads facing in each direction. It is believed that each of the four heads recited one of the four Vedas of Hinduism. Unlike the other two gods in the triumvirate or triumvirate, Brahma is not portrayed with any weapons of war but instead holds symbols of knowledge, wisdom, and creation. His icons include tools to perform yagnas or religious rites, such as a water pot, spoon to pour ghee into ritual fires, Vedic texts, and a rosary. His animal vahana is a goose or swan, while Indian artworks show him dressed as a priest or in finery. Indonesian sculptures depict him as an ascetic similar to Shiva. Brahma's consort is usually Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. According to some sculptures, his consorts are Gayatri and Sabatri. Some claim that they are avatars of Saraswati, and thus the same being, while others claim each are distinct deities. Unlike Shiva or Vishnu, the worship of Brahma is not as widespread. Though Brahma as frequently appears in sculptures and texts, there are a few places of worship that are dedicated solely to his worship. Many tales exist to explain this notable absence. A popular legend propagated by the Shaiva tradition holds that the absence is a result of a curse from Shiva. It is believed that Brahma and Vishnu would frequently argue about who among them was the more powerful being. To avoid the brewing war, Shiva changed form into the Agni Stamb, or fiery pillar. that had no beginning and no end in sight. It was decided that whoever found the end of the pillar first would be the more powerful god of the two. Vishnu turned into a boar and probed through the depths of the underworld, while Brahma turned into a swan and searched through the skies. After thousands of years of searching in vain, Vishnu returned accepting defeat. Though Brahma's search had also proven fruitless, he conspired with the flower Ketaki to claim that had found the very top. Angered by the Brahma's treachery, Shiva condemned Brahma to never be worshipped. The Filipino, Bathala and the other lesser gods. In his story, Bathala was more known to have ruled over the barren earth, while two other gods, brothers perhaps, Ulilang Kaluluwa or a snake living in the clouds, and Galang Kaluluwa or the winged wanderer, ruled the skies. None of the three knew each other, and when Ulilang met with Bathala, tempers ran high. In a violent duel, Bathala emerged as the victor, and Ulilang was killed, giving Bathala control of the heavens. Galang, the more good-natured of the sky rulers, became Bathala's best friend, and after the sky wanderer's illness, leading to an ultimate death, Bathala ruled supreme. The god is known to have married a mortal woman, and from her sprang three of his powerful offspring: Apu-Laki, or god of war and guardian of the sun; Mayari, goddess of the moon; and Tala, goddess of the stars. Apu-Laki and Mayari. Apu-Laki is also known as Adlaw, and he holds dominion over the sun. His sister, Mayari, whose Visayan equivalent is Bulan, rules over the moon, and is known to be the most beautiful goddess in Bathala's kingdom. According to one myth, generally believed to be Pampangan, when Bathala passed away, he did not designate the earth to any of his children. Apu-Laki and Mayari both fought over the earth's dominion. The sun god wanted to be the sole ruler, but the goddess of the moon wanted an equal share. This resulted in a ferocious battle, Apu-Laki taking out one of his sister's eyes. Regretting his actions, he conceded and ruled the earth with Mayari, only they would rule at different times. In the day it was Apu-Laki's moment, and at night Mayari shone in the sky, though her luminescence is dimmer due to the loss of one eye. Tala, the daughter of Bathala. She ruled the stars and is usually referred to as the evening and morning star. There are, however, varied accounts of her origination. One myth tells us that she is not the daughter of Bathala, but in fact the child of moon goddess Buwan, probably a variation of Bulan. It is said that Tala warns her mother of sun god Araw's or Adlaw rampage, and only when the sun is gone is it safe for Buwan to bring forth the stars in the sky. Amihan, the bird of legend is said to be the first creature inhabiting the universe, and has been linked to the saving of Earth's first humans, Malakas, or strong, and Maganda, or beautiful. While this name is particularly not used in the Tagalog creation myth about the bird who stirred up the waters and the heavens, I believe there may be a correlation. The Marias. Maria Cacao, Maria Makiling, and Maria Sinukuan are mountain goddesses, or fairies, with their own separate jurisdictions. The most famous of the three, Maria Makiling, is the guardian of Mount Makiling, located in Laguna. The mountain is said to resemble the profile of a woman, perhaps of Maria herself. Maria Cacao watches over Mount Lantoy in Cebu, and it is said that her domain houses the cacao plants, a useful ingredient in most Filipino chocolate delicacies. Lastly, Maria Sinukuan holds dominion over Mount Arayat in Pampanga. There, she is said to bring forth bountiful harvests from the mountain's fruit trees. Bakunawa, or moon-eater Bakunawa, is most akin to that of a gigantic sea serpent or dragon, and is said to be the god of the underworld. Bakunawa is apparently a major cause of the eclipse, for he swallows the moon at that time. According to some accounts, Bathala and Bakunawa are mortal enemies. In ancient times, it was believed that Bathala created 7 moons to light up the night sky. Enchanted by the beauty of the 7 moons, Bakunawa leaped from the sea and swallowed the moons, angering the king of the gods. To keep the giant serpent from swallowing the moons whole, people in the ancient villages would bang their pots and pans noisily outside of their homes in hopes of scaring Bakunawa into spitting the moons back out. The post-Spanish Philippines. In time, the gods and goddesses' roles, names, and myths changed to better fit a more Spanish and Christian influence. Because of the Spaniard settlements on the islands of the Philippines, missionaries of the time have worked to assimilate the idea of Bathala and the major gods in a monotheistic principle, with saints as the lesser divinities. The missionaries may have been successful, but even then some of the Filipino culture is steeped with allusions to the gods and goddesses of the old. That's all for today. Thank you for listening and watching.